Danielle, and I have a lifelong passion for cooking. I'm a wife, a mother of 4, and a strong advocate for a vegan, plant-based, organic lifestyle. Over the last 10 years, I've been honing in my vegan, plant-based skills, and I'm here to bring them to you in my Plant Beach family kitchen. Hi, welcome back to my Plant Beach kitchen, and today we have an episode of stuffing. Of course, it's the holiday time, and this is one of my favorite recipes. But first, what I want to show you how to do is to create your own vegetable stock. Whenever you're cutting your onions or your carrots or your celery, just take the tops of them, throw them into a Ziploc bag. When the bag is full, put it in the freezer, and then what you can do is take it out of the freezer when you're wanting to make homemade stock, put it into your stock pot, fill it up with water, and add a little bit of salt, and then put it on the stove and let it simmer for a couple hours. It makes the house smell wonderful, and then you have fresh veggie stock that you could use for your dishes, and you've already paid for the ingredients, so it really is free to you. So we're gonna put that on and let that simmer for a little bit. And then what I wanna do is I wanna get started with my onions, carrots, and celery. So right here, we're gonna get all this cooking. I'm gonna add a little bit of my coconut olive oil mixture, and it really does give it like a buttery flavor when I mix those two together. And we're gonna get all of this started here. So really what stuffing, this stuffing recipe is a guideline. So you can use whatever things you like, but for now, this recipe we're gonna use these carrots, onions, and celery. We're gonna get that going, we're gonna get that sauteing, and like anything else, I wanna season it all the way throughout. So nice little amount of salt there. Get the veggies just going and cooking. And I like to take my mushrooms, about a pound of mushrooms for this recipe, and I like to grind them up in a food processor so they resemble like what is familiar to a lot of people. Sometimes they'll put ground sausage or something like that into their stuffing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add those mushrooms in there, and it really does kind of give it that look as if you had put some type of ground sausage in there. You can put fennel in here. We're going to use fennel powder in a little bit, but first what I want to do is just get this cooking, get all the onions cooked down, the mushrooms, and in this recipe I'm using pumpkin, and I want to show you how to carve up a pumpkin. So over here I have a cooking pumpkin. It's a sweet pumpkin. If you don't have pumpkin available, you can use butternut squash, you can use acorn squash. You can leave it out if this isn't something that you even want to mess with. You can add apples in. So really, it's just a guideline of a process and how to make stuffing, and you can change up the ingredients as you like. But to cut into a pumpkin, what you want to do is you want to create a flat surface so it's not rolling around, which makes it more dangerous for you with the knife. So I like to just kind of get it started, give a little bit of a push there, and use the board to kind of help you there. So there, and so I'm creating a little flat surface, and then from there you'll take your serrated knife and you just follow it around. Cut down the pumpkin, exposing the flesh of the inside. And then from there, once you go all the way around the pumpkin, you get the idea. Once you cut off all of the outer skin, then you can simply just come down the pumpkin. Of course, you want to take out any of the seeds on the inside, and you can save those for roasting or anything like that. And then you just simply cube it after that. You just cut the pumpkin, make it into as even sized cubes as you can, just so that way when they're cooking, you don't have really large cubes and then small cubes and they're cooking unevenly. So try to get it as close as you can to the same size. And then once you have all of your pumpkin cut up for you, then we're going to take that and we're going to add it right back in to the pan where our mushrooms and our onions and our carrots are cooking down. And give it a stir in here. And this is going to help kind of get it started, pre-cook it, and then of course it's going to finish off in the oven. So I want to talk to you a little bit about flavorings. Again, I like to add a little bit of fennel powder because it does typically mirror the flavors of a traditional stuffing that might have like a ground sausage in it. So about 2 teaspoons of that in there. And even if you aren't a fan or never were a fan of that, I'm not trying to mimic meat necessarily, it's just the flavors, right? So I got to give that a nice toss in there. And you want the heat to hit all of the spices because it really opens it up. You don't want to throw them in at the end. You really want to have them cook along. In this mixture here, I make my own poultry seasoning. Now, it smells really good. You can go out and you can get a poultry seasoning that they have in the store. Just make sure that you read the labels because sometimes they'll add like funky things like bouillon cubes or they'll add like citric acid or something. So just read the ingredients. But if you wanted to make it yourself, basically it's ground sage, ground dried herbs. It's ground sage, thyme, rosemary, marjoram, onion powder, garlic powder, salt, celery seed powder, and bay leaves. And so I grind that up there and I put about 2 heaping tablespoons in there. And that definitely lends it a really earthy fall flavor that we're all looking for whenever we're going in to make stuffing. And you can see here all the little mushrooms are starting to cook up, the onions, and then I like to add just about 3 cloves of garlic to this mix. And of course at the end of the video we'll post up all the ingredients that I have in here so you could write them down a little more accurately. Alright, so I got the garlic in there. Already you can smell the seasonings. You can smell the sage and the garlic and the dried herbs in there, and we're just going to let that cook down a little bit and I'm going to show you how to cube up the bread. So it's really important to have like a peasant loaf or like a day-old bread. You can see here, this is all spelt, and I get it from a bakery that does organic sourdoughs. And so just look, find what's available to you and try to get a rustic type of peasant loaf. And then what I'd like to do here is just, again, take my serrated knife, make cuts all the way down, and then cube it. So let's say your bread still seems a little moist or you didn't have time to let it sit out the day before. You can simply just turn on your oven and let it dry out in the oven. So just put them on a cookie sheet tray, put the bread in the oven and it's like kind of in a single layer and let it dry out. Because really the goal is that it's going to be absorbing all the moisture to become a moist, cohesive stuffing. So alright, so we're making our cubes. And it does help if you have really sharp knives in the kitchen. I need to send mine to the knife sharpener. You know, they actually say less incidents happen in the kitchen if you have sharp knives. So all of us should be making sure that we're taking care of our knives. All right, so we're just going to add our bread cubes to the rest of the bread that I had cubed up there. And I'll put this over here because I want to talk to you about these herbs. So right here I have fresh sage, rosemary, and thyme. And it's really important that you use something fresh since there's a ton of dried herbs in the dish. You want to kind of brighten it up at the end. So what I've done here is I've chopped up a few of these, a couple sprigs of the rosemary, a couple sprigs of the sage, and the thyme. So the thyme I wanted to demo for you here. If you have little kids hanging out, this is a great task for them, or let's say some people come over and they want to help you. This gives them something to do and not too much to do. So right here you want to take the sprig of thyme and you want to run your fingers against the way they're growing and you see it just takes it right off. It is a little bit of a tedious task, but nevertheless, it makes for a wonderful flavor in your stuffing. So we're going to take that back over to the stove because we're going to add that in right at the end. Now everything looks like it's cooking nicely, and you'll see down in the pan, if it starts to get stuck to the bottom, no worries, because you've got your broth on the back here. We've got about 3 to 5 cups of broth, and we're just going to use a little bit to try to lift up some of the pan, the bottom of the pan. There's like, it's stuck to the bottom of the pan, but you want that in there because there's definitely flavor in there. All of the stuff that gets cooked down to the bottom of the pan and caramelized creates flavor. So, okay, so we'll just scrape up the bottom, get all of that incorporated. And really, it's just, making homemade stuffing is really just this easy. So once all that gets cooked and looks like it's coming together, you want to add your bread. Yeah, it definitely looks like a lot, but the goal is to get all the moisture in there, and then it becomes like one in here. All right, so I like to add cranberries. It's about a cup of dried cranberries. Again, you could take this time and add apple or anything that you may like. I like the bite of the sweet, just a little bit of sweet amongst all those savory flavors. All right, so now that we have everything here, you got to do your best not to have everything spilling out over the pan, but whatever does spill out, you can keep and eat yourself. After all, you are the cook in the kitchen. So, all right, let's add some veggie stock here, and you can see it's got a beautiful color on it. And so right there, right off the bat, I just added about 3 ladles, which is about 3 cups. Each one of my ladles represents a cup. So you'll see now all of that is just coming together. We want to fold all the ingredients here. And the smells off of it are just absolutely wonderful. Ha. All right, and then I like to add in my fresh herbs that we talked about earlier. And that just really lifts the dish. It really perfumes it on different levels. So you have layers here. You have a bunch of the dried herbs. You have all this, the sweetness of the cranberries, and you have the nice texture of the pumpkin, the carrots, the celery, the onion, which are all very reminiscent of a holiday meal, right? All right, so here's the little trick for you. Some people put eggs in their stuffing and some people do not. Of course, we are not because we're making vegan plant-based meals. But a little trick is psyllium husk. And it acts like an egg, similar to if you've ever had a chia egg or a flaxseed egg. But I like it because it really takes the mixture together. If you don't have this, still make the dish. It doesn't make it or break it. It just brings it together a little bit more. So if you do have it, use it. And it's also very healthy for you. Psyllium husks are very good for your digestive tract, and they actually also act as a prebiotic. So it helps nourish and feed the probiotics that are in your body. So, okay. So I like to take about 1 teaspoon and just sprinkle it over the top. And then it'll kind of come together and congeal and make the whole mixture kind of stiffen up like an egg would do. Okay, very similar to that process. Now, here's where you have to use your judgment. I'm looking at this and I can see that some pieces are still really dry. So this is and then some pieces are really wet. You see, you want it a little more wet. So that's telling me right away that I need to put a little more broth in there. That's why we say 3 to 5 cups, because just every bread is made different, and the dryness of the bread when you start is going to be different. So this is where you kind of just have to use your judgment and say, okay, is it wet enough? Do I need it to be more wet? And don't forget, it's going to go in the oven too, so you want to make sure there's enough moisture in there. And at this point, we are going to test it, right? Because we want to test for our salt and pepper. It is good. I'm going to put a little more salt in there. And I am going to put some fresh pepper. See, that's why it's important to test. Every element needs flavor and every element needs to be you need to taste it, because if everything tastes good along the way leading up to your dish, then your dish is sure to be successful. All right, and I see the edges here. I'm going to add just a touch bit more broth. And now that should do it. I see everything coming together. The little pieces of pumpkin are looking beautiful in the dish, and they just lend a real unique flavor. Plus, it's the season for squashes, so why not utilize them where you can? All right, now that looks good. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a little bit of your olive oil mixture, your olive oil coconut mixture. You're gonna place it in the bottom of your pan here. I like to get the oil just all moved around so all the edges get it. We don't want anything sticking. And then from here, you take your stuffing mixture, pour it into the pan. Wow, now that looks really good. Flatten it down. And then just take that, stick that into the oven about 375 for about 40 minutes or so. You'll see it'll start to bubble up around the edges. There'll be a crust on the top. And I've made one earlier so that way you could see the finished product. And there you have it. Beautiful, beautiful herb pumpkin stuffing. There isn't anyone at your table that wouldn't like this. So I'm going to give it a little taste just so I can describe the flavors to you one more time. You can see the little crispy edges. So right here I have a little bite of pumpkin and carrot and bread, and it smells like the holidays. This stuffing is a must make. Anybody at your dinner table will love this and probably will go back in for seconds or thirds. Thanks again for watching. We have more episodes coming up, so stay tuned and we'll see you next time. Be sure to like us, be sure to subscribe, and let me know what you want to see veganized. Thank you, everybody.